mind?
Yes, completely, but that's not a recent thing. Listen.
Yes, and what do you do?
This is the moment you've been waiting for since the day you were born. Don't screw it up now.
You know, I really think you might.
Not sure I'm very happy about it. Here come the drums!
So here it comes, the sound of drums. Here come the drums, here come the drums.
Hello, welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest to watch all of Doctor Who, all of it, in random order. My name is Chris Taylor.
And I'm Pete Pachal. And yes, all of it. Absolutely all of it. We are committed, people. Stay with us. We'll eventually get there. We'll get them all.
And we are a couple of guys who've written about Doctor Who the best and just love the show and love any excuse to talk about it.
Totally.
And love the view of the show you get from watching it in random order, which has particular resonance this week, I think, with the fact that we'd seen the episode that we watched this time, we'd seen some of the consequences of it already. So it felt very Doctor-ish, right? That we were kind of watching this out of order.
Yeah, absolutely. We, as people might not know, that the episode we've been taken to by the beloved randomizer is one called Oxygen, which I believe aired in 2017. So it's fairly recent Capaldi episode from his last season. But we had seen the consequences of this episode, which, spoiler alert, is the Doctor goes blind. And we saw how that sort of turns out in The Pyramid at the End of the World, Lie to Land. So it's interesting. I think the randomizer really wanted us to... was really fascinated by that. The randomizer couldn't get it out of its head. Like, what was that about? We gotta go back and see how that happened.
This is how you know. This is how you know it's truly random. Is that weird stuff happens where the episodes it's taking us to are kind of bunching up in interesting ways, and it is producing a situation where this sort of felt like a prequel that was produced years later.
Yeah, the randomizer certainly has its preferences too, because it loves Capaldi. Like, this is, what was this, our third or fourth Capaldi outing? Even though we haven't,
like that. It's up
there's many Doctors we haven't even done one with yet. So, Capaldi is reaping the benefits of this random journey. It certainly shows that, the things don't even out quite so soon when you do a completely random thing. But yeah, Capaldi's pretty good. We've done a lot of late Capaldi. Yeah.
But before we get into it, we should catch up with everything that's been happening with Pull to Open on the socials. Pete, how's the world of TikTok?
The world of TikTok is always a fascinating world to visit in time and space. Anyway, we have great fans there, and we have been sharing stuff from the last couple of podcasts we've done. So there was Planet of Evil and Androids of Tara. And people enjoy. There was a good, consistent response on the Planet of Evil stuff. I think Tom Baker and Sarah Jane. I just said the actor and a character. Tom Baker and Liz Sladen are always like crowd pleasers, and so there was a lot of good feedback on that. And on Androids of Tara, I just want to tease this out. We did something we've never done before, which was take what we're about to do shortly, which is the TLDW. Part of the podcast, which is where we recap the episode in what turns out to be a very short amount of time, and we did a TikTok on it because TikTok is actually giving you more time. So we did the full 2-minute recap that we had for that one, which was a really fun thing to do and to edit.
I love this idea because I love the idea that what we're building is a library in TikTok of every Doctor Who story in 2 minutes or less. Yeah. I think that would be an enormously useful resource. And people could just TLDW the entire show by the time we're finished, Pete. The entire show.
I look forward to that archive getting assembled, and I perhaps also look forward to an intrepid editor who wants to help us take that on, because I will say that was the most difficult edit we've ever had on TikTok. It was well worth it. It was super fun to do. I got to say, when you get into an edit like that and you're going through it and you're kind of looking for the perfect moment in a show to encapsulate,
So you had to slice it down. You had to slice it down to less than 2 minutes. I don't actually know what the maximum.
Oh, no, I mean, like, what in searching for, as we were going for every piece of the spoken summary, you look for a slice of the episode that best encapsulates that.
See.
And so you just need exponentially more slices to put in the background for it to really to really work, which again is super fun. I really like when you said so they're gonna crown the android, so they do that, and that was like a 2-second thing between them talking, and then suddenly the crown's on the guy, which is kind of a funny transition, but it's like you have to look for each and every one of those sort of moments and then put it all together, which was kind of cool. I mean, it's cool. It's super fun to do, and I think the result was really cool. Let us know if you liked it. Let us know if you want to do those as an editor, because I'd love to talk to you. Maybe we could work out something. But it's an exercise that I look forward to replicating.
Yes, indeed.
With more.
This will be our monument, contribution to human civilization. Doctor Who.
Exactly.
First story in random order in 2 minutes or less.
And before we go from TikTok, I just want to give a shout out to our 1,000th follower. Let me find I found the profile. 1 second. I'm gonna call him up now. It was because I know we promised some weeks ago that we were going to reward this person. Now, I will say it depends on this person not following us, but allowing me to follow, because it's a protected account.
Actually listening to this podcast.
Yeah. So it's a guy named James, and the profile number is J684739. That's his actual handle. So if that's you, please accept our request to follow you so we can send you a message and then perhaps work out this prize action. James.
Yes,
anyway.
Yes, James, lots of numbers. Let us know who you are. We're interested in you. We're glad you followed us. You become a Pull to Open superstar, and we'd love to hear from you. Start a dialogue, maybe even invite you on the show. I think that's a worthy prize.
I think that's totally a worthy prize, and I think we've got to set an expiry date on this, and then we'll go to the 1,001 first follower, because I don't know, James.
We will never stop hunting for James.
He's only got 2 people.
We will take our TARDIS everywhere
right now. We'll be like the puddle in the pilot, right? Like, we're just gonna, like, wherever you go,
exactly.
You go to the end of the universe, James. We're gonna find you.
Oh,
that kind of sounds like a threat,
that's
right?
That's a nice segue. We will not stop. We will hunt you down. We're not actually doing it ourselves. It's our suits are making us do it. So that's my excuse. My oxygen-themed excuse for the day.
Love it. All right. No more spoilers.
Well, we should...
I'm
sorry. Yes. The moment has now arrived. It is that part of the show.
Oh my God, has it?
Time.
Can you tell I've been stalling? I've always just, the last one I didn't quite get it. I got close, but I mean, I think I can do it this time. The new Who's are, I think,
I can stall. I can stall a little bit more, because we can pause for like station identification. You're listening to Pull to Open, but also for the fact that it is Saturday, August 28th when we were recording this. I always like to locate us in space and time. And the space that I'm in is the Bay Area. And the Bay Area this is basically the wood smokiest day of the year, as the massive mega fires that rage in Northern California turn their fury in our direction with the Diablo winds. That's what they're called. They come from the north. All starting to feel a bit Doctor Who-ish, but certainly for that reason, it was a very interesting time to be watching a show called Oxygen. That is, as people was about to reveal, about setting limits on how much you can breathe. when I am
Yes.
here in an environment that does inherently set limits on how much you can breathe, at least outdoors. So, with that in
Hit,
mind,
hit
we
close to home
now
for you, huh? Are you okay?
super close to home,
Get any
as
counseling?
often happens with the randomizer, right? It finds a way to tweak us somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, anyway, without further ado, Pete Pachal, come on
Oh
down.
my. Okay, I'm doing this. So
Insert
this is
insert applause here.
TLDW.
TLDW, Too Long Doctor Who, in which we give you 30 seconds per 30 minutes. And I guess
Roughly,
for
yeah.
New Who, we're generous and we give you a full minute. So
Okay.
Peter's about to describe the entire plot of Oxygen in 1 minute, just as soon as I find my stopwatch. We will get that going. And all right. Pete, you ready? You feeling nervous?
Ready? Okay, not closed all the tabs. No notes. It's all from memory. Let's do this.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so there's these two people. They're outside of a space station fixing it, and they're having a moment. But then one of them gets killed by these zombie people in spacesuits, and they advance on the other guy. Meanwhile, the doctor is at the university he's at, and he's giving a lecture on space, even though it's supposed to be crop rotation, and talking about how the vacuum of space is so bad. Persuades Bill to go into space with him because he's into space and he likes to travel. And they go answer a distress call, which is that from the station in the far future,
30
which
seconds.
the people there have all been killed by their suits. It turns out the suits that they're in are killing them. Why are they killing them? Well, it's not clear. They think it's a hack, but the doctor and Bill and Nardole figure out that they have to put these suits on because there's no oxygen in this place. It's only in the suits. So they try to help the people, but then they figure out it is actually the corporation that runs the station that's been killing them because they haven't been efficient. And that they do is they tie the suits to the station itself and threaten to blow it up.
And
So
time.
that'll be too expensive for them to do it. And I forgot the thing about the spacewalk with the doctor going out of the space and getting blind, and Bill is okay because the doctor gave her a helmet, and but the doctor's blind. He doesn't tell anyone though. It's a big reveal at the end of the episode, and that was like I probably shouldn't have started with the zombies.
Well,
didn't do it.
that was a nice try.
I feel like I need a do-over. It was like now we can't do the archive, right? Because it's like, I mean, we can, but it's just.
Well, I
not
tell you
good.
what.
Yeah.
I tell you what, we could do at the very end of the episode. We could do it again.
Okay.
After we've relaxed, we've chilled out, we've discussed it, we've shot it back and forth. We can give you one more go.
You know what? My bad call that, like I said, was trying to start with the cold open, which really is just kind of background, right? Like but I thought it was such a good cold open.
It was a beautiful cold open, and
Right.
that's the thing about coming to this show straight from Classic Who, is the production values just feel off the charts. Like,
Agreed.
feel at several points like you're watching 2001 or you're watching Gravity. I know a lot of people compared the cold open to this episode to the movie Gravity with Sandra Bullock spinning around in space. Like it literally starts with a space spin, and meanwhile the doctor's doing the voiceover and he says "Space, the final frontier," Star Trek reference, obviously. The final frontier is trying to kill you.
Now, is that the only Star Trek reference, by the way, in Doctor Who? Has there ever been another Star Trek reference?
Did we not find that there was one in the Lie of the Land?
Oh, was there?
I believe I remember. Something that Nardole says. Oh yeah, he says let's trek on because he's just done a Vulcan neck pinch.
Oh yeah. Okay, now you're yes. Okay. So, but that was after this. So I guess this is the season of Star Trek references.
That was
think
after.
about it.
Really?
Interesting.
Yes. Super weird. But I like that part. I like that the Doctor's taking this thing and subverting it, and the fact that the Doctor subverts the most famous line in all of Star Trek at the opening of the show kind of gives you a clue that subversion is what's happening here. Like uprising, rebellion. Like the Doctor himself is rebelling against Nardole, Nardole is standing in for the old Doctor, or Capaldi's previous self who locked, spoiler alert, Missy in the vault and has to guard the vault. And he's saying, you can't go into space. I know you're missing space. You can't do it. So there's that sort of sense of perversion of, the Doctor's giving in to his perverse imp, his basest impulses. Just go run away from his problems, run into space. That's the main thing that we've known about the Doctor all these years, that he just likes to get away.
Yeah, I think
and
there's...
then,
yeah.
well, I was going to say, and then the episode continues to subvert our expectations and sort of subvert it attempts with varying degrees of success, we can discuss this, to subvert capitalism, which may be too big a target to have taken on, but it also subverts our expectations that everything's going to be fixed and normal by the end, with the wonderful cliffhanger that the Doctor is actually blind. He did not fix his blindness.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a pretty good twisty episode. So there's a lot of sort of back and forth on all the sort of aspects you mentioned. I feel like it's interesting. Some of those are more interesting than others, but that unfortunately not all the characters are well used, and you're kind of you don't quite get enough of a feel for any one of these things as much to get super into the story. That said, I think it's a really good story. The space, the final frontier, obviously it's a delightful reference, and subverting the sort of expectation of what he was saying there, but also like I just like the realistic portrayal of a vacuum, which is a rare thing in science fiction, and they kind of get it wrong a little bit because they don't do quite the silence. Like I think 2001 and other movies like that get that correct. But the series, even Doctor Who, has played very fast and loose with like the effects of a vacuum on a body, and I don't think they've ever quite done it in like nuking the fridge kind of way where you're just kind of rolling your eyes, but
nuking the moon maybe.
Yeah, but there's definitely been times in Old Who where they've sort of like, how did they do that? Like I think Fort of Doomsday was sort of the biggest one where again it was the Doctor, so they can kind of get away with it because he's a Time Lord and we don't know the extent of his resistance to a vacuum, which is kind of tested to the absolute limit here. But they've never, it's kind of in sci-fi and in Doctor Who in particular, it's so much of it's in space, but you never quite get the like. Here's what happens when you don't actually have these quote unquote bubbles to protect you. So that I thought was very cool.
What it was, and another thing I thought was cool is that you get the science lecture first.
Yeah,
literally the Doctor is lecturing. And I love it's such a great detail that you had to put it in DLDW. I love that it was supposed to be a class on crop rotation, and he just somehow has gotten off the topic and into drawing a giant skull made of space on the blackboard. But you get the lesson first, and again, we talked about this in the past. It's part of Doctor Who's legacy that it was supposed to be a semi-educational show. It does that, I think, very effectively by having the Doctor lecture on the actual science and simultaneously foreshadowing things like the fact that you shouldn't hold your breath in space because you'll explode.
Right. So like these kind of more, I guess, somewhat nerdy details about it. But I know like for a while in sci-fi, there was like a matter of some debate on exactly what happens to your body if you were exposed to the vacuum of space. And I think this, we've come to a consensus on it, and I think this is presented as what actually happens. It's not like they do. It's not like there's been a lot of testing about this, but there actually has been some testing, not with humans, but I think in terms of what happens to a creature when it basically is exposed to the vacuum of space. It all sounds very accurate. And I think, to your point about it looking great, like just seeing Bill's face, even when she's in the airlock and she doesn't have the helmet on, and having that background from the first scene, you're just like, oh, like you it's almost like that dialogue is Chekhov's gun, right? And you kind of know it is, but then when you
Yes.
finally see it, like you're really just whoa, oh wow, they're really doing it. And
It is. You know, that's what struck me on a second viewing. I hadn't watched this since it came out. Was that the airlock scene is I think one of the greatest. It really stood out for me this time. It was one of the greatest airlock scenes in science fiction. And I love a good airlock scene. I love the airlock scenes in Battlestar Galactica. There's a great one in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The various iterations of that, where Ford and Arthur are literally thrown out of an airlock, and you know, it plays with the the fact that science fiction invents utterly improbable solutions to that by the infinite improbability drive, and the Heart of Gold picks them up. But they are out in space for 30 seconds, right? So that made a huge impact on me as a child, because I watched Hitchhikers, contemporaneously with Doctor Who. So I thought about that a lot. The fact that, in the Douglas Adams universe, you can survive for 30 seconds. I think that's roughly where science is at the moment. Certainly, it is true that, you could survive for just a few seconds if you didn't hold your breath and make yourself explode, if you didn't, give your blood enough time to boil, blah, 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 right? You need to make it to safety on the other side very quickly.
yeah,
I love that the episode plays with this. I love what happens after she goes out of the airlock, where it's not just a way to sort of make the space battle of the zombies against the zombies super cheap, but also, by just making it slow motion and very sort
right,
of expressionistic filmmaking. You're seeing it from her perspective. You're feeling like you yourself have been thrust out of an airlock with no oxygen.
yeah.
Like, you really feel for her and identify with her, and see that the panic on Pearl Mackie's face is just tremendous. She does such a good job there of making us feel for her.
Oh yeah,
In this
well,
and other
Pearl
and the
Mackie,
moment before the Doctor kills her.
right? Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I think Pearl Mackie is excellent in this episode. I mean, it's such a visceral performance throughout. You're really right there with her when she's, with what we just described in the airlock. When she's shocked at the end, when she's the gorgeous scene, which I think we'll explore in a minute, of um, being wrong, being called a racist by the blue guy, which I think is one of the most delightful
Yes.
scenes in perhaps the whole New Who era.
Yes.
But we'll get into it in a bit. But what I will say is the character isn't very well served in this particular episode. She doesn't really have a lot to do other than run with the Doctor as a companion. She doesn't have a lot of decisions to make. She's literally a puppet in her suit and a victim several
Yes.
times over. So it's not a good episode for Bill, even if it is a great one for the actress. And on the I will say
That's a
on
great point.
the cheap zombie fight, I didn't felt cheated out of it. You know what I mean? Like when they glossed over it, because I think you're right. One, it's like you're really way more invested into what's going to happen to Bill at that time, and the adversary that there's first there's already a ton of zombie stuff in it, so you get tons of that, but it really hits home. The adversary here isn't the zombies, it's the lack of oxygen, and obviously it's right there in the title, but kudos for it really not forgetting that and making sure that is the conflict that they're constantly emphasizing throughout, and it really works.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can say that I ever really bought the concept of selling oxygen by the breath, first of all. And this may
That's a
be the
little
point in
silly.
the show where I nerd out and talk about the excellent book Breath by James Nestor, which I reviewed last year, and it has kind of changed my life in terms of how I think about oxygen and oxygenation, particularly during exercise and during sleep. Like, you read that book, you learn that we don't actually need as much oxygen as we think we do. First of all, secondly, that we release it into the lungs through counterintuitive way called the Bohr effect, where we if you actually up your carbon dioxide intake just a little bit, your hemoglobin will release more oxygen into your lungs. So actually,
Interesting.
and it's interesting because knowing that, and then you
So we
watch
need
the
more
scene where
CO2.
Nardole. Yeah, exactly.
Here.
And then you're watching that scene where Nardole is sort of trying to encourage Bill to just breathe, right? I mean, he's not saying breathe more slowly or more deeply, which is wrong, because if they are counting by the breath, and that is made very clear throughout that these people on the station have been charged or are being charged by the company store, even as they're getting paid, supposedly, presumably, who knows what kind of economy this is in the future. They're being charged per breath. Well, if you're being charged per breath, then obviously the thing to do, and maybe I'm just thinking this because I read breath and because I, write a lot about meditation, do a lot of sort of, experimentation in yogic breathing. You can stretch out to breath to at least 20 seconds, a single breath, right? So
And with
if you're really
practice,
going to take this to its, yeah,
yeah,
with practice, and sure, it's harder to do in a stressful situation, but you could do at least 10 seconds, right? So that should be the focus. That should have been what Nardo was, just super slow breathing. And maybe that would have just slowed the episode down. But it's little niggling problems like that. And the question of like, well, who would actually even go for this job if you had to pay by the breath? That's ridiculous. I mean, I want to go into space and mine some copper ore as much as the next sci-fi nerd, but if I was told that my salary would be docked for every breath I took, I would, I'm out. Sorry, you guys have fun. I will find a shitty toilet cleaner job on Earth. I'm sure there's still something like that going.
I suppose you have to assume that there's huge swaths of the economy and whatever civil rights look here that look radically different from even contemporary capitalism right now.
And that's the problem. You have to assume it.
Yeah,
Jamie Mathieson did not put it in the script.
Well, I will say that I really like your idea of people who would take this job being super practiced at stretching out their breaths, and they're all just like really great at it and really zen, and they just kind of, maybe they even have like a morning meditation routine, and maybe this is getting really beyond the scope of what the episode is really about, but I mean, like that idea that why are you guys all so zen about this? Oh, well, it's because you have to be to take this job because you got to stretch your breaths out to 30 seconds breath. That's the only way to make it worthwhile. Something like that would have been pretty funny.
It could have been. I mean, you can totally. It's the problem we run into with New Who a lot is that it doesn't give itself breathing space to flesh out its concepts. I saw that one Hoving interview like 5 seconds before I hit it. I had to go for it. It's a fascinating concept. It deserves more exploration. And there just isn't enough room for it because you've got to hit all those other Doctor Who notes like zombies and suits that make you move. And by the way, let's talk about these suits because I wonder if you saw what I saw in these suits.
What did you see in the suits, Chris?
Being such a Cyberman guy, I'm surprised that you didn't immediately latch on to these suits they're kind of Cybermanish, right?
Because they stomp?
Because they stomp, because they take control of you, because they kind of, it's kind of a proto-Cyberman situation as much as it is a zombie situation.
Yeah, I guess. I didn't quite get that. I like the idea that they're not really zombies, right? Like, obviously, the bodies are just dead, and it's the suits that are the problem, and the bodies just happen to still be in them, which was kind of interesting to think about. Though they seem to kind of go back and forth on like how smart the suits are, because they do explicitly say at one point that the suits are dumb, right? And they're very simple. So that seems to, and again, this might be subversion, but that seems to imply that there's going to be a big reveal at some point in the final act on who is controlling the suits. And there is and there isn't, right? I mean, there's the reveal of who's actually behind all this, but there's no they're not like drones where there was like a person in a closet somewhere or someone they can really talk to who was the actual like consciousness, I guess, or person that
Right.
was working against them. So then
There's
what
no
were
Wizard of Oz. There's no Wizard
yeah.
of Oz moment. There's no
So,
reveal of the man behind the curtain.
so then I'm kind of a little bit of at a loss on when the suits stop their onslaught because they recognize that the Doctor has latched their lives to the station, and therefore they've done a new analysis and it's no longer profitable to kill everybody, which is kind of a good little resolution. But like you just said, the suits were super simple, right? So
Yeah.
how who did that? Like, or was there some data that went back to a cloud somewhere and made this assessment? It's all a little vague.
Well, I think
Yeah.
there are two problems here. I think with the suit situation, and you put your finger on both of them, and I think that they both stem from, kind of the writer Jamie Mathieson didn't do what we talk about in writing of drowning one's own kittens, killing your darlings, as Dorothy Parker put it. I think there are a couple of darlings here that he held on for too long. One is the fact that he could say that they were fighting the suits, man. Like, that line about the
Right.
Doctor being like every worker in history, they're fighting the suits. And he just wanted that line so much that he made it about the suits, which therefore naturally made it confusing as to actually what's going on here and who the villain is here. And then secondly, there's the fact that Nardole reveals that an AI that he previously dated is now literally inside the suit. Did I get that right?
They just sort of threw it in, and I'm not really sure if that was for color. I mean, it's kind of funny,
Yeah.
But it's very extraneous, and you kind of wonder, like, well, wait a minute, is this AI just happens to have the same name, and is it then? Or no, it doesn't, because he names it. He says, "I dated someone. I named Velma," and then the thing says, "Oh, now I'm Velma." So, did he create his girlfriend? Is that the implication?
Yeah.
So that after this episode is, I guess, Nardole's native time when he dated. I guess. That's
this
never
is
really
a problem
clear.
with. It's a problem with a lot of Nardole stuff is that he'll say stuff about his sort of robotic history and past
Right.
that are clearly meant for comic relief, but just sort of subvert the entire purpose of a believable plot. Not that Doctor Who ever trades in those much, but you kind of you've got to, this is very much something that was observed about the Harry Potter series, right? Is that the more inherently fantastic your plot is, the more you've got to bring it down to earth, and that's usually, and make it sort of feel real and everyday lifey. And that's usually the purpose that comic relief solves, right? It's not to make it more absurd, more ridiculous, and more out of the realm of our suspending our disbelief.
Well, it also just makes us care less about Nardole, and because you don't really have any sense of who he is, what he is, why he's doing what he's doing, and what really matters to him. Like, because he talks about all this stuff about how his face isn't as the original face. He talks about the AI he dated, and there's throughout this series, there's a lot of references to like his, I guess, modular nature, but yet he still needs a smart suit. Like he's still sort of organic, and like what?
Yeah, and he wears glasses. I never understood the glasses thing. It just Matt Lucas looks so wonderfully otherworldly and alien without glasses. I don't know why you had to add that feature, and I'm sure that there's some line somewhere that explains it, but it just would have been so much better otherwise. And you always get the sense with Nardole that what they really wanted was like an animated character. Like they wanted to be some sort of Disney crossover, right? Because he does feel like he's kind of obeying the laws of a more cartoon universe. I don't know if you caught the moment where he is cleaning the inside of his helmet, right?
No.
But he breathes on the inside of the helmet to clean it, and then successfully, as far as I can see, actually does clean it by wiping on the outside. Right?
Okay.
I
missed that one.
Oh, wow. That's, we can definitely go back to it for the TikTok, but it just seems to make no sense at all. It seems that like we've gone so far in this episode to set up the rules of physics, how they work in space, and now you're sort of having this cartoonish moment where Nardole breaks the rules of physics because he's Nardole, and he's never landed for me, and it's a shame. I love Matt Lucas. I loved his work with Little Britain, and before that, when he was a character called George Dawes on a show called Shooting Stars, which was a comedy quiz show, and he just played a giant baby who played drums. That's how I'll always remember Matt Lucas. He's this anarchic cartoon figure. Like, he's perfect in many ways. I just don't think that they ever served Nardole very well.
Nice. Still better than Ringo, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, so agree. Nardole is problematic. Speaking of problematic and moments,
Yes. Darren.
I gotta say, Darren and that moment, like, it's one of the it's a laugh out loud moment. I mean, I remember laughing the first time I saw it, and I was delighting in it again when I watched it this time, where they Bill has that very genuine whoa reaction to seeing the blue guy. And she's just, oh well, wait,
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm not used to seeing. It's like, oh great, we've rescued a racist, and it's so good on just so many levels. Like, it's essentially taking, first, it's like hilarious, but like, it's hilarious because it's taking kind of like this microaggression, and it's really in its rawest form, because blue people don't really exist, and we can kind of see it sort of almost as a lab sample of a microaggression. But it's just so fantastic. Again, obviously doing this very knowingly, that Bill, being a lesbian black woman, just feels this from the other side, and it makes us as a viewer feel sympathy for her. So not only is it hilarious, you can appreciate it no matter. Honestly, I feel you can appreciate this no matter where you stand on microaggressions and where you stand on politics, because it's just really, really funny, and it sort of presents both sides of, like, what you might say is like, what's the big deal versus, oh, I get it. Everyone could be this way, either way. So I just thought it was just top marks on that.
It did make me think of the wonderful Avenue Q song. Everyone's a little bit racist.
Totally.
And yeah, I love that nobody else, like, also there's that wonderful moment where he responds, like, she says, oh, I'm normally the subject of this, and he just looks at her like, why?
Yeah. And then
which is kind of nice. So yeah, it is hopeful in that sense, in the future, like, we genuinely won't see why the color of people's skin should matter, instead of just saying that, quote unquote, we don't see color or whatever. Yeah, and it's a beautiful moment, and it's is it ruined? I don't know. Or is it heightened by what Nardole says next, which he walks up to him and says, some of my best friends are bluish.
Yeah, I'm on the, it kind of ruins it. I mean, not ruins it. It's just, I found it extraneous and unnecessary. It's like, okay, this is flogging the idea. What one stroke too many.
It reminded me of that great line in Yellow Submarine with the Blue Meanies, where the Beatles dress up as a fake Blue Meanie, or an ally of the Beatles dresses as a fake Blue Meanie, and the Blue Meanie leans in and says, "Are you bluish? You don't look bluish." Which is, you can talk about the racist subtext of Yellow Submarine all day long. That's a whole other topic.
Yeah,
let's get back to us.
Well, we're very we're exploring a lot of problematic things in this episode. But
well, speaking of problematic things, let's talk about capitalism.
Let's do that.
Because that's not going to be controversial at all if we go there.
Well, I would say, like, in terms of anti-capitalist screeds in Doctor Who, of which there are many, this is the most overt. Yeah, it's probably the least subtle. Even though I think it's pretty well executed. I think you and I you might not buy the oxygen thing as much. But I think because it adds a certain degree of some viscerality to the whole idea. I think it comes across well. So wherever you stand on capitalism, I think you could recognize this is a good sort of story that sort of does its job into condemning it pretty well. Taking something like oxygen, which is should obviously be like more akin to a utility than a private thing, and this whole thing, like the moment that is like jaw dropping for me is where the station pumps out unauthorized air. You know, because the raw wastefulness of that, you're just like, holy crap! Like,
Yes.
clearly, like, you know, like, I get it. This is sort of market forces run amok.
That feels right.
Yeah, as a moment.
That's the part that really feels right, and it's like it's a dumb, wasteful waste of resources to create artificial scarcity. Which again makes me think of Douglas Adams and his whole thing with where the Golgafrinchans land on Earth and decide to burn the forests because they've made leaves their currency, so they have to create artificial scarcity by burning as many leaves as possible. You know, a wonderful satire, great little commentary, and kind of of a piece with the number of breaths thing, which is like you don't realize that that's the most inefficient way you could be counting your oxygen loss
or counting distance, even, because at one point they even point that out. It's like, what are these meters? No, it's breaths. And it's like, oh, that seems like a bad way to draw a map.
Yeah, that falls on the side of Darling that should have been killed. Should have been killed for me.
Well, what they could have done the same thing. I mean, I don't know. This is probably would have raised the budget, but you could have been like, have a toggle, you know, like, oh wait, I'm seeing it in breaths. Hold on, click. Oh, it's 10 meters, not 30 breaths. You know what I mean? Like, and then you see the sort of the numbers change. Like that might have been a decent way of showing that without sort of making it seem all encompassing. And that's kind of like the problem here. I feel like the whole anti-capitalist thing just becomes all encompassing in it, to the point where the Doctor has to make that sweeping statement at the end. That this is the incident that essentially destroys capital, or is the downfall of capitalism for the entire universe, or like humanity. Which kind of like, well, hold on a second, wait a sec.
Yeah, I have questions.
Like, those two people he saves at the end are the only people left, and it's like they don't really seem like the type of people who are going to lead a revolution. I'm sorry, nothing against the two of them. I forget who they are. I think is it Ivan?
I'm sure they're perfectly lovely background characters from a Base Under Siege episode, but yeah, we don't really get to know them very much or see any leadership skills, or like, I don't know, is this supposed to be a Moffat era, you know, the Doctor as God kind of rubbing off on people, making them into little revolutionaries kind of thing?
No, I think what it is a Moffat era thing, but I think it's a Moffat era thing of trying to attach this world sweeping, universe changing importance to an episode, but it's so tacked on, and it usually is. So at least in other episodes, like the two that really come to mind are Kill the Moon, which is like, oh, the moon's an egg, you know, and Death in Heaven, which is like, oh, the afterlife is really this death matrix the master created, didn't you know?
I just had a moment of existential angst, realizing that the randomizer will someday take us to Kill the Moon.
Okay, probably next. So but it is,
Kill the Moon, like, aka Kill Me Now.
Oh, I love it.
Watch it again.
But like I say, I think the Moffat thing of like doing this universe changing stakes to the story I just said actually makes them feel smaller, because you're expecting there to be a consequence or some clarity around it, and there almost never is, and it's forgotten about. So the story would still work. This story still works as just another capitalism run amok type society. Similar to whatever the Sunmakers, the Green Death, pick your classic episode, and the Doctor stops it and makes it, leads people down the right path, and that's fine. You don't have to say like this is the downfall of all of capitalism forever.
Yes, yeah, and oh, by the way, capitalism ended. The end.
Yeah, it just sounds like some kid, right? Like it sounds like a joke, like someone's ribbing us on Reddit or something.
Well, speaking of connections to other episodes, I wonder if you two saw the connection to a Capaldi episode that we've already had. That kind of we haven't talked about much. Sleep No More.
I did not see the connection, other than they're both kind of Base Under Siege and
both Base Under Siege in future in space, but also both capitalism critiques. Right, because Sleep No More.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the reason that they are sleeping no more
Productivity.
and building up all this dust is productivity, is capitalism. So
Mhm.
it's at one remove from being a critique. Like, you never go the full anti-capitalism. Let's keep it at a safe distance. And also, by the way, I think it's misnamed. I think what they're talking about here is not capitalism, because it's not like the Doctor is suggesting some kind of alternate system where, the sale of goods and services is somehow banned and we're in some sort of space communist utopia.
Right.
We don't see that at any point. Like, it's not the thing that the show's about. It's really more about corporatism, right, and corporate capitalism, and
Right.
capitalism run amok because it's being run by the big guys. I mean, I am dying for a good science fiction story to show us what happens when or if the world is all small businesses. Like, what if you
Huh.
just banned businesses from ever having more than 200 employees? I think we'd be in a lot of better place, because the rapacious nature of capitalism seems to stem from corporations getting large, sort of having and bloated, and having this impetus to get larger and larger and larger, and more anonymous, and less human.
And yeah,
Um,
and less accountable to elected governments.
yeah, less accountable, and more, seeking seeking growth just because that's what the law says you have to do, right? Create value for shareholders
Right.
once you're a public company. So you're required to grow. It's a great documentary. I don't know if you've seen it, called The Corporation, which really breaks down the mechanics of this. Basically says, look, this is actually the growth philosophy of the cancer. Growing at any
Right.
cost.
Constantly
We
replicate, etc.
literally, large corporations are designed to be cancers on society by law. By the law
Right.
that says continually create more value for shareholders.
Right. So,
So,
though, like the it's the analogy breaks down a bit because obviously cancer isn't creating any value, but
yeah.
I think that's a great idea. Like what you just suggested, like having a sort of the planet of small businesses or the empire
Mm,
of small businesses, and see what that is, and also like trying to explore what the weaknesses of that would be, because you could see
mm,
competitive systems that do allow corporatism simply being by most measures probably more successful from a growth and output productivity standpoint,
yeah.
and seeing how that plays out would be really interesting. I
Yeah, and
think you can
Doctor Who
also
has the
make the
capacity to
case.
do that.
I think you can also make the case that it might be um, a condemnation more of just unbridled capitalism, with no checks and no humanity
Mm,
attached to it, which I think you kind of get a little bit of the reverse argument in a rare uh, it's rare that gets made, but it was in Kerblam in the Whitaker
mm,
era, and it's kind of like it's clearly all about Amazon, and this Kerblam company is the same sort of business model. But
yeah.
it turned out like I like that one because it sort of subverts the expected anti-capitalist anti-capitalist screed, and it turns out the corporation is the victim in that episode, and actually redeems itself at the end, because it shows like, well, if
Hmm.
we attach some humanity to our policies, we might just succeed, and it might be win-win for everyone. So they sort of were like, we're not going to go, I think at some point 100% automated. They were going to like limit it to like 80% or something like that, which I
Yeah.
thought was like
Yeah, it's nice.
a good attempt at sort of like showing that, okay, like we don't always have to take the easy simplistic resolution to these things, and have make sort of more subtle
mm.
points. But this one obviously is the reverse.
You know, one of my favorite editors used to say, "Don't bring me problems, bring me solutions." And I sort of chafed against him saying that until I realized what he meant was, like, I'm the boss. I'm too busy running the whole ship. Just come to me and show me that you've thought about the problem and that you have a proposed solution. Right? It's just a shorter way of saying that.
Yeah.
And I think the same is true for these kind of screed episodes of Doctor Who. It's like, yes, we know that capitalism has issues. We all agree on that. We disagree about the extent, how pro anti-capitalism you are, how much you want to smash the entire system. But it's never going to work if you just smash the system. Show us what you want to replace it with. Let's explore that.
Yeah.
Let's take this precious time that you have to talk to a mass audience about capitalism and explore some alternatives. So yeah, to your point, Kablam does that. And
Well,
Oxygen
in
is
this
just
one,
sort
they
of
just,
this.
yeah.
It's kind of like a primal scream, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they just kind of punt the solution. I think the doctor just says, it's the downfall of capitalism and humanity moves on to its next big mistake. And you're just like, which is what? Like, what?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
again, beyond the scope, but like,
Yeah.
it's just
How does that
unsatisfied.
follow? Yeah. Well, okay. So let's go back to satisfying moments for Who veterans. There is a reference here in Oxygen to the very second story in our
Mm,
list, the Daleks,
yeah,
which I
yeah,
didn't realize when I was watching it. That so Nardal disables the fluid link of the
right.
TARDIS.
Yeah, he removes it, so he's got it like in his pocket, and he removed it because the doctor told him to, that would disable the
Mm.
TARDIS, and because the doctor apparently didn't trust himself, so
Yeah,
told Nardal to remove the fluid link in case he does exactly what he does in this episode. But clearly, clearly
a
he
reference to
was
the
not
Daleks.
really that married to the idea because it doesn't actually disable the TARDIS. So you could unpack that a little bit as a character moment. Like it's a bit silly that it even happens, given how it plays out.
It makes me think there's like a super deep cut for the super fans of the show, right?
Right.
If you're a super fan and you've seen the Daleks tons of times, you might recognize that and go, oh, that's a good one. Yes, that's how you would stop the Doctor from traveling, because we all know that he can't operate without the fluid link. Oh, he figured out a way around it. He did a workaround. He's not the same Doctor as he once was. And it is interesting, by the way, coming here from well, not directly from Hartnell, but having recently watched so many Hartnell
Right.
stories,
Hmm.
the randomizer went through a bit of a Hartnell phase. It really struck me how different the Doctor is, how much more confident the Doctor is, that like he's had all these centuries of experience of, yes, I walk into these situations, I'm instantly the smartest person in the room, here's what we do, bam 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 bam, you're following me, you're listening to me, you're doing this. And he's, compare that to a Hartnell who would just much more, maybe he would still get to the same point of being the leader of the group, but much more reluctantly, much more
Right.
slowly,
And
right,
to be
much
more of
more.
a journey to it.
Mm,
Yeah. And he sees this guy right off the bat, and he's sort of like, again, it's more of Bill getting the short shrift here, where um, he's like, okay, pick a place to go. And she's like, all right, there. And he's like, no, 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 no. Let's go here. So it's just kind of funny, but it's like, what the hell, man?
yeah. Yeah, if you're going to give the companions the choice, it's like saying all of time and space. Where do you want to go next? And you give them the answer. And he's like, no, no, not there, except there.
Yeah.
The Egyptians, no, no, not Egypt. Done with Egypt.
Nah, just I had Egyptians for lunch. Let's just go. Let's go to the far future. But to unpack the fluid link thing even a little more, and it probably doesn't bear this level of scrutiny, but if you actually think back to the Daleks and go over that the Doctor lies. So he
Mm,
lies to Ian, Barbara, and Susan that the fluid link is broken and is out of, I think,
mm-hmm.
mercury, which is the fluid. And that's how he convinces them to go explore the city, which they end up getting captured by the Daleks. So, you know, it might be truthful that there's clearly some truth to the fluid link being disabled will disable the TARDIS because Susan believes him, right? Like Ian and Barbara, they don't know anything.
Mm,
Susan is like also fooled. So I guess there is some truth to it. But so either you can take his meaning as like, oh, you actually don't need fluid links, which I don't think is it. Or that he's modified the TARDIS that the fluid links um, aren't as necessary anymore, or he's got a backup, or he just gave Nardal, like, pointed to some completely redundant component and called it a fluid link.
It's kind of a nice reference also, and we've discussed this on the show before in when we go to our Davison episodes. You pointed out something that I hadn't been aware of before, that there is a phase in Davison where there's always a TARDIS component that doesn't work, or that has been removed or
Yeah.
stolen or something.
And there's a lot of techno babble
Yeah.
about quantum accelerators and temporal limiters and that kind of thing. And it's very much like the TARDIS is treated more as a machine,
Mm.
as a craft, than even stories before and since that treated it more like certainly a machine, but also kind of partially conscious, a bit of a living
Mm.
thing. I think that featured obviously pretty highly in the Pertwee era, but certainly also in the new series, which is sort of reinvents itself and has a mind of its own.
Yeah, the tension between the Doctor's wife and the Doctor's ride
Yeah,
is evident throughout the show, and it's fascinating to see that this is very much a Doctor's wife moment, right? It's like, ha! I don't need no stinking fluid link. Look at this beauty. Look at how she takes me where I need to go.
we know each other so well.
There's a beautiful moment just after that. By the way, we should mention when they land on the station, and Bill's like, "Why? It's space. Why isn't there zero gravity?" And Doctor's like, "Artificial, artificial gravity. Presumably the spinning wheel creates it." And Bill tries it for a bit. He's like, "Oh, but what if I jump up? What if? Oh, what if I?" And that's kind of nice. I think that's a nod to what we would do
Yeah,
if we were the Doctor's companion.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially if you've never, I mean, it's so casual in most sci-fi that we're on a ship, it's just presumed you have gravity, even though that's really a thing that has not been invented yet. Like the only way we know how to simulate it, and credit to sci-fi franchises that do it this way, is the rotating sections, right? Like in Babylon 5 is the only one that repeatedly comes to mind when I think about that, because they're explicit about it, and they even show like the ship design, how things are rotating constantly. But this whole casual thing, there's just casual gravity that was done by some science that we don't know of. I mean, like if you pick someone from the 20th century, they're gonna be like, "Holy crap! Like really? There's no planet here, and I can just jump up and down? Wow, that, that's not a thing where I'm from."
Casual gravity, I love it.
Gravity is the most
Anyway,
casual. Is the most casual of hookups when you talk about forces.
yeah,
Yeah. It's just
yeah, it's casually connected.
everywhere. You just fall into something. It's boom. It just happens, dude. So
So
should
have we
we? Yeah,
have we exhausted the
exhausted the air
the
supply.
possibilities of oxygen? How many breaths have we taken in this episode, Pete?
Oh, I had a lot of deep ones, and that wouldn't it be hilarious if we went
Mm.
right to deep breath from oxygen?
Ooh. That is when we discover that the randomizer is alive.
Right. It could. That'll be huge. What are the chances? Well, we will find out. But we should
Indeed.
really talk about what would have happened if the evil plot here had succeeded.
So the evil plot, first of all, hard one to identify, but it's the corporation itself has told the suits to disassemble the organic material in it because they're not being productive enough, right?
Right. Exactly. And it's mostly succeeded because most of the suits are on a network, and it doesn't take much. Once it's on the network, it'll just send a command to do it. So that's why our heroes have all been okay, because the suits are off the network and they need to be actually physically touched for that to happen. So if we're talking about the evil plot, that's the evil plot. Then I guess you presume in the final moments, either the Doctor doesn't put it together or isn't successful about latching their life signs onto the station's self-destruct, and because of that, the suits just walk in and kill them. And the thing is, if that happens, Bill's still not dead.
Yeah.
She's the only one. So if everyone else dies, and the Doctor, I guess, presumably would regenerate to Jodie right there.
Yep.
And
So we get Jodie and Bill, the continuing
wow.
adventures.
That sounds like a
Yeah,
fun pairing, actually.
right. I would totally see that. I was terribly dismayed when Pearl Mackie left the show, along with Capaldi. I think she really could have provided some, wonderful continuity. And Bill is such a great character, that as you say in this episode, she didn't have a lot of agency, and it's unfortunate for her character, because she's so compelling. She only gets one season. So yeah, I guess I kind of would have liked the evil plot to have succeeded, because we would have hastened that journey to Jodie, and had Pearl Mackie along for the ride.
And so, presumably,
Alas.
once she regenerates, Pearl Mackie's still unconscious. I mean, Bill's still unconscious. So then the doctor, presumably, the suits are now, like, it may take her a couple minutes. The suits might have moved away, so she had some time to sort of orient herself. And then rescue Bill, find the TARDIS, and just get away. And then it becomes, I guess, just a regeneration episode. Because there's no one left to kind of to save, and capitalism endures. If you think about it, so that's what happens if the evil plot succeeds. There's no downfall of capitalism. It just keeps on chugging along.
Yeah, humanity doesn't get an opportunity to move on to its next mistake.
Whatever that is.
Whatever that may be. Space communism, Rom communism, to quote the great Ted Lasso.
From a universe standpoint, it's kind of like I say, I don't know if it's that different. I mean, the dialogue's different, but it's like, it's kind of an equal shrug. Like, I guess.
I wonder if, when we're done with this entire experiment of watching all Doctor Who in random order, if we could rank the episodes by how little interest we had in what would happen if the evil plot succeeded, because that's sort of an indicator of how low the stakes are, right?
Right.
The stakes are low. They may be lower here than they've been at any point since the King's Demons.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no, Magna Carta won't get signed.
The stakes are low, even though they explicitly say they're not. But like I say, it for some reason them trying to inflate it just makes it feel smaller. And it just kind of like don't really care what happens to this society, this universe once we leave. It's too bad.
There's a lesson there for storytellers everywhere.
Indeed.
Make sure your stakes are raised and feel raised.
All right. So should we raise them for ourselves, perhaps, with some reliance on our randomizer? Maybe it'll take us to some high stakes stuff.
Yes, indeed. I've gone to random.org, which new listeners need to know. Random.org provides true randomness, and they base this on atmospheric noise rather than algorithms, so it looks truly random, as shown by the super weird bunching up of Capaldi episodes that we've watched, and Hartnell episodes. All of this stuff in the vast swathe of space occupied by Matt Smith and Tennant. The number of Doctors we haven't seen yet. Anyway, we have broken down the number of Doctor Who stories into 297. Our numbering is slightly different than the show.
Yep, and so that's the essential other part of the randomizer, which is a spreadsheet. A virtual spreadsheet, though. If we were using a Type 40 machine, it would be a punch card, no doubt. A State of Decay reference out there for y'all, and maybe with that, hopefully we'll get there. But I would love to go to a Doctor we haven't done before. That would be pretty sweet. But
that's the challenge.
Well, we've challenged the randomizer with that before, and it keeps frustrating us. So I'm just going to say, let's do something fun.
Let's do something exactly the same, randomizer.
Yeah, let's do that.
Don't take us anywhere new or interesting in any way at all. Don't produce an interesting contrast. All right, are we ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
No, not the Mind's probe.
90.
90. Oh, wow.
Have we done that?
We go back to the Talons of Wang Chang.
What?
Yes. Well, it's a long one, Chris. This is a 6-episoder.
6-episoder, but also renowned as one of the best Doctor Who stories ever.
Indeed.
The question is going to remain whether it holds up in 2021. It's interesting having dealt with the microaggression and casual racism moment of Oxygen that we're going here, where we're going to have to deal with it some more. But,
yeah, perhaps at a meta level, but yes. And all I have to say about this one is rats. You get it.
Rats.
You love it.
Why did it have to be rats?
No, it's going to be a fun one. Yeah. Lots to unpack on that one. There's going to be a lot of looking at things that they ran with later, but also like another Hinchcliffe era sort of gothic horror tale in Victorian London. So this will be fun. Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember. I don't think I've actually watched it through all the way before. So having an opportunity to do that is going to be super interesting. Coming to it fresh-ish in 2021, I'm going to be able to provide a different perspective from the average fan who has seen this 60 times and cannot divorce seeing it now in their heads from all of those times in the past when they saw it.
Yeah, the randomizer is definitely it's got its preferences and it loves the classics. Does to come back to them, after having seen early Hinchcliffe stuff with Pyramids of Mars. Now we're getting into the real deal. This is arguably the peak. So, all right, without spoiling too much, looking forward to that. It's going to be a good time. So, Chris, this has been great. Great to breathe in oxygen with you, and as well as you, listeners.
And breathe out sheer capitalism.
Exactly. Or whatever next mistake we have. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Yeah. This has been Pull to Open, the podcast. Yes, it's a podcast. If for whatever reason you're encountering this in some other platform or medium, please subscribe. Open up your podcast app. We're on all of them. We're on the Apple Podcasts app, the Google Podcasts app, the Spotify. I don't think they have a podcast app, but Spotify. And every other podcast app. All the podcast places we're there. Pull to Open. Subscribe. Leave a review. We love those too. Follow us on the socials. TikTok, as ever, is our favorite social network. We're at Pull to Open. All one word, obviously. And Twitter and Instagram, we're at Pull to Open 63. Having some fun on those platforms as well. I think that's it, Chris. Any final words? Final breaths?
Let's go forward into our next great mistake.
Let's do it. All right, folks. See you next time.
We'll see you there.